When executive assistant Rachel Bennett stormed into the penthouse suite and slapped the woman she thought was the new maid, she had no idea she'd just assaulted her actual boss, a self-made black billionaire CEO who'd been testing her staff. What happened next exposed a conspiracy that would shake everything forever. The 42nd floor of Sterling Heights Incorporated was in chaos. Rachel Bennett, executive assistant to the VP of operations, clicked her heels frantically across the marble floors of the penthouse suite, barking orders at junior staff members who scrambled to prepare for the arrival of the new CEO. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against her tablet as she reviewed the schedule for the third time that morning, her anxiety barely concealed beneath layers of designer makeup and false confidence. "Everything needs to be perfect," Rachel hissed at a trembling intern carrying a tray of coffee cups. "The board is already questioning this hire. We need to show them we run a tight ship here." Her voice dripped with condescension, a tone she'd perfected over 8 years of clawing her way up the corporate ladder, not through merit, but through manipulation, politicking, and knowing exactly whose secrets to keep. The rumor mill had been churning for weeks. The previous CEO had retired suddenly. Some said he was forced out, and the board had made what many executives whispered was a controversial choice for his replacement. Rachel had tried everything to get information about the new CEO, but the board had been unusually tight-lipped. All she knew was that someone was coming to restructure the company, and that thought alone sent shivers down her spine. Restructuring meant investigations, and investigations meant her carefully constructed house of cards might finally collapse. Patricia Crane, the VP of operations and Rachel's direct supervisor, emerged from her corner office with a glass of whiskey despite it being only 10 in the morning. "Any word on when this mystery CEO arrives?" she asked, her voice laced with barely concealed contempt. Patricia was a woman who'd built her career on the backs of others, taking credit for innovation she'd stolen and silencing anyone who dared to challenge her authority. "Within the hour," Rachel replied, glancing nervously at her phone. "I still can't believe the board went with someone so unqualified." Patricia snorted. "Diversity hire, obviously. They're probably trying to improve optics after that discrimination lawsuit last year." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Just make sure all those financial reports are buried deep in the archives. The new CEO doesn't need to see everything on day one." Rachel nodded knowingly. Those reports contained the evidence of systematic fraud, fake vendor contracts, inflated expenses, embezzled funds that had been carefully siphoned off over 2 years. She and Patricia had built an empire within an empire, controlling information flow, suppressing talented employees who might threaten their positions, and ensuring that anyone who looked too closely at the numbers mysteriously found themselves transferred or terminated. It was at that moment that the private elevator dinged and the doors slid open. Both women turned, expecting to see the new CEO flanked by board members and corporate fanfare. Instead, a black woman in her early 40s stepped out, dressed in simple jeans and a crisp white button-down shirt, carrying a bucket of cleaning supplies and a toolbox. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore sensible shoes that suggested long hours on her feet. Diana Harper stepped into the penthouse suite and immediately took in every detail. The opulent furnishings purchased with embezzled money. The nervous energy of genuine workers contrasted against the entitled smugness of the executives, the way people's eyes shifted when they thought no one was watching. She'd seen it all before. In fact, she'd made a career out of exposing exactly this kind of corruption. Rachel's face immediately twisted into a mask of irritation. "Excuse me," she called out sharply. "The cleaning staff is supposed to use the service elevator." "Who authorized you to come up here?" Diana said nothing. She simply observed, her keen eyes missing nothing as she began to slowly wipe down a nearby glass table. She'd learned long ago that people revealed their true nature when they thought they were talking to someone beneath them. Patricia walked over, her whiskey glass still in hand. "For God's sake, Rachel, get rid of her. The CEO will be here any minute and we can't have the help wandering around." She looked directly at Diana with undisguised disdain. You, bathrooms down the hall. At least make yourself useful and give it a deep clean before our important guest arrives. Diana met Patricia's eyes for just a moment, long enough to see the casual cruelty, the ingrained prejudice, the absolute certainty that some people simply mattered more than others. Then, without a word, she picked up her supplies and walked toward the executive bathroom, her ears open to every conversation happening around her. For the next 20 minutes, Diana cleaned while Rachel and Patricia talked freely, assuming their words fell on ears too unimportant to matter. She heard them joke about creative accounting. She heard them mock employees they'd recently fired for not fitting the culture, all of whom, Diana noted mentally, had been people of color or women who'd dared to speak up. She heard them discuss hiding evidence and coaching executives on what to say if the new CEO started asking uncomfortable questions. Kennedy Rodriguez, a junior assistant who'd been with the company for only 6 months, passed by the bathroom and caught Diana's eye. There was something in Kennedy's expression, a mixture of fear and recognition, as if she sensed that this quiet cleaning woman saw everything Kennedy herself had been too afraid to report. Diana emerged from the bathroom just as Rachel's phone buzzed with an urgent alert. The assistant's face went pale as she read the message. "She's in the building." "The CEO is in the building right now." Panic erupted. Patricia barked orders for everyone to line up in the reception area. Junior staff scrambled to straighten their clothes and fix their hair. Rachel's hands shook as she tried to smooth down her skirt, her mind racing through all the ways she needed to make a perfect first impression, to charm and manipulate this new CEO the way she'd managed everyone else. In the chaos, Diana began walking calmly toward the CEO's private office, a massive corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Rachel spotted her immediately, and something inside her snapped. All the stress, all the fear, all the desperation to maintain control came pouring out in a moment of explosive rage. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" Rachel shrieked, her voice echoing through the penthouse. She stormed toward Diana, her face flushed with fury. "That is the CEO's private office. How dare you even think about stepping foot in there?" Diana turned slowly, her expression calm and unreadable. "I know exactly where I'm going," she said quietly. "Know your place!" Rachel screamed, and before anyone could react, her hand flew through the air and connected with Diana's face in a resounding slap that seemed to freeze time itself. The entire floor went silent. Junior staff members gasped. Even Patricia looked shocked at Rachel's loss of control. Diana's head had turned slightly from the impact, and for a long moment she didn't move. Then slowly she turned back to face Rachel, her cheek reddening but her eyes absolutely steady. The private elevator dinged again, and this time 5 board members stepped out, led by Chairman Gerald Hayes. They took in the scene immediately, Rachel standing with her hand still raised, Diana with the mark of a handprint on her face, and the entire executive team frozen in horror. "Ms. Harper," Gerald said warmly, walking directly toward Diana, "we're so glad you're finally here. We apologize for the unconventional entrance we suggested, but you said you wanted to see the real culture before announcing yourself." Rachel's world tilted on its axis. The blood drained from her face as understanding crashed over her like a tidal wave. The cleaning woman, the person she'd just assaulted in front of witnesses, was Diana Harper. The Diana Harper, self-made billionaire, builder of 3 Fortune 500 companies. The woman who'd famously gone undercover at her own corporations to expose corruption and toxic leadership. "No," Rachel whispered, stumbling backward. "No, no, no, this is a mistake. I didn't know. I thought—" Diana's voice when she spoke was like ice. "You thought I was a cleaning woman, so you treated me as less than human. You thought I didn't matter, so you spoke freely about fraud, embezzlement, and discrimination." She turned to address the entire room, her presence suddenly commanding, radiating the authority of someone who'd built empires from nothing. "I've been undercover at Sterling Heights for 3 days. I worked as a night janitor, I delivered packages, And today I cleaned your bathrooms while you discussed how to hide evidence of corporate fraud from me. Patricia tried to intervene, her voice shaking. Ms. Harper, I'm sure this is all just a terrible misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Diana cut her off, is that you all believed you'd never be held accountable. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. The voices of Rachel and Patricia discussing fake vendor contracts, inflated expenses, and plans to hide financial irregularities filled the room with damning clarity. Kennedy, the junior assistant, stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. Ms. Harper, I have documentation too. I've been keeping records of everything, the discrimination, the harassment they covered, up the employees they forced out for asking questions. Diana nodded at Kennedy with respect. Thank you for your courage. She turned back to Rachel and Patricia. You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes to confess everything, every fraud, every stolen design, every person you've hurt to maintain your power. Or I hand what I have directly to federal prosecutors, and you face the maximum charges. Rachel collapsed into a chair, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I can explain. We were just trying to meet quotas to show growth. You were stealing, Diana said flatly. From the company, from shareholders, from every employee whose innovation you claimed as your own or whose career you destroyed to protect yourselves. Over the next 10 minutes, the full scope of the conspiracy emerged. Rachel had been running fake vendor schemes, creating shell companies, and funneling money into personal accounts, over $15 million in the past 2 years alone. Patricia had been stealing product designs from her own development team and selling them to competitors, pocketing millions while the original creators received nothing and were often fired for performance issues when they complained. Together, they'd built a system of oppression, systematically suppressing talented employees of color, LGBTQ+ workers, and anyone who might threaten their control. 3 other executives were implicated, all part of a network that had turned Sterling Heights into their personal piggy bank while destroying lives and careers to maintain their power. Diana didn't just fire them. She had federal agents waiting outside, and as Rachel and Patricia were escorted from the building in handcuffs, the reality of their situation finally sank in. Federal charges of fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. Assets would be seized, prison sentences awaited, and the empire they'd built on the backs of others crumbled in a single morning. But Diana wasn't finished. She called an emergency meeting of all department heads, and in that boardroom she dismantled the remaining corrupt executive structure piece by piece. You built a culture where people like me, people who actually work hard, are treated as less than human based on nothing but appearance and prejudice, she said, her voice resonating with controlled fury. That ends today. She promoted Kennedy to vice president of operations. She elevated 2 other overlooked employees, both people of color who'd been systematically held back despite exceptional performance, to executive positions. And she announced immediate policy changes, blind hiring practices, transparent pay scales, mandatory ethics training, and a direct hotline for reporting discrimination or fraud that would come straight to her office. The news broke that afternoon. Billionaire CEO goes undercover, exposes massive corporate fraud. But the headlines only told part of the story. What they didn't capture was the personal nature of Diana's mission. In a press conference later that week, Diana revealed the truth that had driven her. 20 years ago, my mother worked at Sterling Heights. Lorraine Harper was a night janitor who took that job to put me through college. She witnessed sexual harassment by a senior executive and reported it through proper channels. Instead of investigating her claims, the company fired her, blacklisted her in the industry, and threatened legal action if she spoke publicly. Diana's voice cracked slightly as she continued. My mother died 5 years later, working 3 jobs to make ends meet, never getting the justice she deserved. When I became successful, I vowed to honor her memory by fighting the systems that crush people like her. 6 months ago, I bought controlling shares of Sterling Heights, specifically to do what the board should have done 2 decades ago, create a company where my mother would have been heard, protected, and valued. The transformation of Sterling Heights was swift and dramatic. Diana implemented radical transparency in all operations. She created pathways for advancement based solely on merit and performance. She established partnerships with historically black colleges and universities to recruit diverse talent. And perhaps most importantly, she installed a memorial plaque in the main lobby in honor of Lorraine Harper and all workers who never got to see justice. May your children inherit what you fought for. The results shocked the business world. Within 6 months, Sterling Heights' profits increased by 37%. Employee satisfaction scores reached record highs. Innovation exploded as talented people who'd been suppressed finally had the opportunity to contribute. The company became a case study in how ethical leadership and diverse perspectives actually drive better business outcomes. Rachel and Patricia, meanwhile, faced the consequences of their actions. Both were convicted on multiple federal charges and sentenced to significant prison terms. Their assets were seized and used to compensate the victims of their schemes, the employees they'd forced out, the innovators they'd stolen from, the lives they'd derailed. 6 months after that fateful day, Diana stood in the same penthouse suite, now completely renovated to reflect transparency and accessibility rather than exclusive luxury. She was there to meet Aaliyah, a young black college student who'd been selected for Diana's new mentorship program, an initiative that provided full scholarships and executive training to talented students from underprivileged backgrounds. Aaliyah entered nervously, clutching her portfolio, clearly intimidated by the surroundings. Diana smiled warmly and gestured for her to sit. "Relax," she said gently. "Tell me about yourself." Aaliyah took a breath. "I'm a first-generation college student. My mom cleaned offices her whole life. Actually, she still does. She always told me that one day I could be the one in the corner office instead of the one cleaning it." Tears welled in Aaliyah's eyes. She worked so hard for me to have opportunities she never had. Diana felt her own eyes sting with tears. She reached across the table and took Aaliyah's hand. "My mother said the exact same thing, and you know what? She was right. You will be in that corner office, because talent, dignity, and worth have nothing to do with where you start and everything to do with who you are." The young woman's face lit up with hope and determination, and Diana saw in her the reflection of every person who'd ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because of their background, their appearance, or the color of their skin. From her prison cell, Rachel watched the news coverage of Diana being named one of Fortune's most influential CEOs. Sterling Heights was now worth over $10 billion and was renowned as the most ethically run, diverse, and innovative company in the tech sector. The woman she'd slapped, the woman she'd treated as beneath her, had not only destroyed Rachel's corrupt empire but had built something better in its place. Diana's closing statement in her acceptance speech resonated across boardrooms worldwide. Respect isn't given based on appearance, job title, or assumptions about someone's worth. It's earned through integrity and owed to every human being regardless of their position or skin color. The people you underestimate today might be the ones deciding your future tomorrow, but more importantly, every person you encounter deserves dignity simply because they're human. That's not just good ethics, it's good business. Diana Harper didn't just fire a corrupt team, she dismantled a system designed to keep people like her mother invisible and powerless. Today, Sterling Heights is worth $10 billion and known for having the most diverse, ethical leadership in the tech industry. Never judge someone by their appearance or position. You never know who's really in charge, and more importantly, everyone deserves respect regardless of who they are. Dignity isn't determined by job titles or skin color. Treat everyone with respect, not because of who they might be, but because of who you choose to be.